The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Project Nerd as a whole.
I could let them know about the sorrow and the happiness that the future has in store for them. Maybe they could learn from it.
Let's dive deep.
Let's dive right in.
We're gonna dive deep into this.
Let's deep dive into this.
This is Diving Deep.
This is Diving Deep.
This is Diving Deep.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Diving Deep. I'm your host, Iggy Mishniaki, and as you've noticed over the last few months, we've really covered a lot of politics and social issues, and we've gone to the scripted way. But as I talked about in 2021, we wanted to alternate back to our old interview format with our podcast, and we had a huge opportunity come here. So I'm really excited to talk to you about social media, a topic we promised for 2021. So I'm here with Ayman Hariri, and he is the founder of, VERO, True Social Media, a social media platform that is very prevalent in the geek, cosplay, and creator community. If you're not familiar with it, you can head over there and check it out. We'll obviously have the links for you. But with all that's going on in the social media world, we thought it would be a great time to talk about that platform, why it's happening, why other things are happening on social media, and maybe even some views into what the future of social media could look like. So, all right, Ayman, how are you doing today?
Doing well.
Awesome.
Well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. As our Diving Deep fans know, we kind of talked briefly beforehand. It's some more casual conversation to where we'll talk on some topics we don't normally cover in some of the other podcasts. But before we get too deep in everything too, in your words, tell me about VERO.
So VERO is a new social network that we built from the ground up, really trying to create a better online social experience. And by better, I mean one where the platform gets out of the way as much as possible and allows people to share the things that they love, and for all their audience to be able to see the posts that they post in their feeds without algorithms getting in the way, without an agenda of a platform getting in the way of them just connecting over the things that they share with each other.
And it seems in your statements, I believe your mission statement or values would be the way to put it, is that you're connecting people meaningfully. And what do you think? I mean, meaningfully could mean so many things. What do you feel meaningfully means here?
Yeah, I think, we're social creatures. We enjoy telling stories. We enjoy telling people about our experiences. The closer they are to us, the less we feel that we're being judged or where we need to perform for them. And so meaningfully just means the most natural, the least judged, the less show-offy you can be,
Right.
If that's even a word, but just to let you be yourself and not have to think about an audience and having to cater to an audience and shape your behavior towards them, but rather be yourself and for the rest to happen naturally.
Yeah, and you're kind of leading into something that's already such a big, I don't know if the word taboo would be right, but a big obvious with social media is so many people, it's the running, I don't want to say joke, it's the running comment though, that we are somebody different on Facebook than we are in real life. And it sounds like you're already saying you want to get past that. Like we need to be presenting who we are in real life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's really the what started all of this. I got onto social very late. I didn't want to get on a platform where everybody could find me and, just willy-nilly connect with me. And I wasn't too sure that I wanted that. And my the co-founders of VERO, who happened to be my cousin and my best friend, they encouraged me to come onto social. And so I tried different social platforms. And my friends had obviously already gotten on there, and they had a runway. So I could see the stark difference of how they were behaving online versus how I knew them to be, and how somehow these platforms bring out something in people where they feel they have to present the best version of their lives, even if it's not really true, or really perform for this invisible audience that starts to interact with you through, likes and preferably comments, but something that then pushes you to do it again. And we started this really with saying to ourselves, well, we're not the same people we don't put on the same face to all people in our lives. How can we do that? How can we represent that online? And recently what we feel is that is actually it's a kind of release valve of some sort that helps with your mental health. And in VERO, something unique that you can do is whenever you connect with somebody, you can either set them as a close friend or acquaintance, but they don't know what you set them as. And the reason we did that was you don't share everything with everybody. You don't invite everybody into your home. Even when you do, you don't open up every single photo album that you have and show everybody what you've got going on, your history, that kind of stuff, right? I mean, those embarrassing moments when your friends come over and your mom starts showing them pictures of you when you were a kid.
Right.
Those kinds of things. That doesn't happen with every single person in your life. And so why should that not be available to us online? And so we started with that simple premise of, close friends, acquaintances. And obviously we allow you to have followers. You can turn those on or off. If you just want to have VERO be private, or if you want it to be public, but all really with this focus on doing what's best for the user and not just what's good for the platform in order to grow the platform at any cost.
Right. And I think for our listeners to even clarify what you're saying as somebody like me. So I have a brand, and much through the life of this brand, I've also maintained a career to take care of my children as a single father, and the single father challenges that come with that as well. And then, as we talked about briefly before we started, is my challenges of dealing with different values and views than certain family members or certain people. And if we go to my Facebook page, it all just meshes. It's all just one crash course. And if you go to VERO, for those that haven't checked it out, you need to download and see it. And it's really cool because when you go to make a post, at the top, it's basically like a sliding bar that you get to choose. Do I want everybody to see this? Even people that just chose to follow me, all the way to my closest friends and anywhere in between. And I think that's pretty unique feature because, as you mentioned, you expressed it the best, is even if you invite all of these people that are on your friends list into your house, how many of them are actually going to see the photo albums, the things like that. So I think it's an incredible way to say it. And it highlights one of the many, many problems with social media. And I think another problem, as you mentioned, is you kind of touched on it, but you guys even say it, especially with the VERO 2.0 launch, it's optimized for connection, not addiction. And you talked a little bit about that because you don't like the algorithm thing. So tell me more. What do you mean by that? Optimized for connection, not addiction.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're not looking to detract you from your life. I look at technology as an enabler, a fantastic enabler. Look at this conversation that we're having. I'm all the way in the Middle East, you're in the States, and we're talking to each other as if we're in the same room. And I always say technology does an amazing job of bridging space and time. Once you start to have it target how much time you want a user to spend in your app, then things start to go bad. And that's one of the reasons why we never wanted to do ads. When we decided we didn't want to do ads, initially it was, we couldn't say with a straight face, if anybody asked us what our business model was going to be, we couldn't with a straight face say, we'll figure it out later, because that only leads to one thing. Because when you give something away for free without being clear from day one, you ultimately have to keep giving it away for free. And the only way to monetize when you're giving something away for free is through ads. I mean, the most efficient way, if you can sell stickers and you can sell all sorts of, in-app purchases and things like that, but you end up having two types of users and all sorts of things. What we wanted to do was start something that basically said, look, you're coming in as a user knowing what you're going to get. The relationship between our users and us is very clear. We're here to serve them, not to serve a third party that wants them to do something. That's where the algorithm comes in other applications that are ad driven, is that one of their metrics for success is time spent. And it's not something that we look at all. We actually did the reverse. We were the first app, like before Apple, before any platform decided to put it into their operating system, to have an in-app screen time. So we show you how much you're using VERO, and you can decide if you want to use it more or less. And it's totally up to you. You can turn it on, turn it off. And it's more a message to our users to say, look, this is what we care about. These are our principles. and we're not looking to do anything else.
That's huge, as you mentioned, on your phone now, that so many of the phones have that. And as you talked about, if you go up into the settings, you can see that screen time in VERO, how quickly it can scare you, because how quickly you can be on a screen without even realizing it. And we avoided the name of it, but there is the one out there with the algorithm, obviously, that like you said, they want you on there more screen time. And we're starting to see documentaries. We've seen, to a level, a work of fiction film, a really good film, The Social Network, that really talks about it. And I think a lot of things you just touched on there, and that movie, which is probably our clearest insight. And again, I understand for any listeners that it is a fiction movie, but the partner who invested the money the whole time from the get-go is like, okay, well, when are we going to get this money? When are we going to recoup? When are we going to recoup? Right. And the whole time it always had to be there. But I think you bring up another big point that I want to dive a little deeper into, is serving a third party versus serving you, or serving you as in the end user. And I think something I've seen when I've talked to Alan, who's connected with y'all, I've talked to Christine, who's works in the communication side of your company, and other people, is that basically is, like you said, there was never anything hiding, and it's always about you. And as soon as you hand out the ads, as soon as you hand out anything, it becomes about somebody else. And I think that's huge for VERO.
And the user becomes the product.
Exactly.
What we want. Our customers are our users. So our behavior is the same.
Right. And you said it much more elegantly than I was rambling on it. Exactly. It's the, and I like that. You're the product or the user. Somebody somewhere or something is being sold. Right. And so if it's, I think if it's free, it's not actually free. But the thing is, that really makes me think of I look at the community, and obviously everybody is open and welcome to VERO. I don't want this to be singled out, but because it is the community Project Nerd is in, I look at a community that has been a big target of VERO and has been a big part of it. And that's the creator, cosplayers, filmmakers, comic creators, all those types of people. And for me, I think that's huge, because these are the people that can't afford to pay Facebook and Twitter and whatever thousands of dollars a month on ads. And now their fan pages are just being buried because they can't. I think that's fascinating. What other reason, why this community, I guess, is to just put it out there bluntly, why this community as such a big anchor for it?
I mean, frankly, I'd like to say that it was a target. I actually think I'd be doing the community an injustice by saying that we targeted them. It's actually they chose us, which is one of the biggest joys of our life.
It's a compliment for sure.
It really is. I mean, because personally, I'm a comic book fan. I mean, you can see the statues and behind me, and I have a comic book collection that I've been building for years now. And so for the biggest community to be on VERO, to be the cosplay community, the comic book fans, is huge for us. Really, really is huge for us. And we're always thinking about ways to better serve that community, to help them find each other, share the things that they care about, work on things together. Whatever it is that we can do to serve that community, we're doing, and we're looking into doing more. Another wonderful thing that happened for us is that Zack Snyder chose the platform as a platform that he likes to use primarily. And that came through me meeting him and being in Batman versus Superman. I had a walk-on role there. And so I got to meet him and quite a few people who are around him, like Clay and Debbie and his family. So having a place that has become such a focal point for all things that he's working on, it means the world to us. Really, really does. And, we work every day to try and make that better. And there's more to come.
Right. So you fit in well with this community of Project Nerd for sure. But I think too, another thing that is, when I go to my Facebook feed, which I'm going to be honest with my listeners here, I don't follow any of my friends on Facebook, any of them, even the ones I agree with values and stuff like that, because all Facebook does is trigger me in a negative way. And when I go to VERO, as you mentioned, from Zack Snyder down to the people I'm personally connected with, I love being surrounded by creative people. And I feel like I just see creativity across that board, from amazing photography to behind the scenes. And you're right, like Zack Snyder shares like almost daily there, like he is frequent on there. And so you just see a lot of creativity, and it makes me feel different. And I think that's huge. And it's a huge thing of how social media can impact your life. And you said earlier too, not just social media, but technology should be it should be an addition. And yeah, thank you. Perfect. I do, like I said, this is diving deep. I want to talk on some deep topics. So great way to put it, that the creative community chose you. Right now out in the world, there's obviously a big news piece where another community chose another platform, and that platform seeing the repercussions of basically, getting in bed with that community. Do you think, obviously there's the giant that is in every other one, is it going to be this way to where anybody is either competing or even giving you a supplemental option for social media is going to have to be niche? Or do you think eventually there's going to be opportunity for brands to kind of elevate to that level of Facebook and Twitter and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. And obviously I ask myself similar questions every day. Ultimately, there is one very important social network that exists, and it's the one that exists in the real world. That is the most powerful one. It's the one that has led us from living in caves to figuring out how we're going to live on Mars. And if we keep thinking about people in terms of single features and single behavioral aspects or anything like that, I think we leave a lot on the table. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take that real world interaction, that real world value exchange, and put that online. I have a similar feeling to you. When I get on VERO, I come off of it feeling enriched. I've learned something. I've heard a song that may have changed my life, or does change my life. I remember very special moments along the way of things that I've picked up on VERO. And I think that that's how a social network should behave, and that's the target that it should have. Not to try to get you to dance for some sort of reaction from an audience or growing an audience in a particular way. I really like the idea that there are some of us who have a lot to give, a lot to teach, a lot to impart to other people, and for other people to learn from that. And that's the behavior that we're going after. That's the behavior that we're most interested in unlocking, and making you feel comfortable to do it online as you would want to do it in the real world.
Right. Oh, comfort. That's such a good way to put it too. I think, as you mentioned too, and I want to put out to the audience too, is I don't do the costumes personally. I love, obviously Project Nerd has catered to the cosplay community for a while because it is so creative. I obviously can't do what Zack Snyder can do. But I think seeing anything creative can help oftentimes get your own brain moving. And as you said, you feel inspired, you feel something, you hear something new, you learn something new. And on Facebook, and I'm sorry to, I definitely, obviously these platforms are all different, so I don't want to directly compare, but it's going to be the main one everybody's going to talk about because it is Facebook. Is, like I said, I've unfollowed all my friends, and when I did that initially, all of a sudden started seeing these pages again of all these creative people that I follow that I thought just weren't posting anymore over there, and they were, and I just never was seeing it. And within a couple weeks of changing that, the algorithm still caught up, and I still barely see any of those people now. I go on and I see the Project Nerd stuff, and maybe 3 or 4 of my creative friends' pages, and that's it. And it's exactly saying, I don't get that inspiration. I want to see that creativity. This is the reason I follow these people. These are the reasons I want to see this. And I want to put that out here, Ayman. Everything you're saying, it sounds so genuine about connections and about the users too, to where anytime I've talked with people that have been involved in other social media networks, and obviously I don't want to bash all of them or anything. I think a lot of them have their places. It is, like you said, it's a different, even when they're saying the same things. I always make the joke, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, so I'll wrap it up, but I always make the joke that when you do an interview, no matter where you interview for a job, they say work-life balance is good here, right? Everyone says it, but do they actually mean it, right? And I think this is the point here, to where from Mark Zuckerberg on, everybody has said it's meant to connect people, but who actually means it? And everything you're saying right here, I'm getting that genuine sense of you guys actually mean it. You want those connections.
It's really what brought me to work with Ayman and the rest of the VERO team at first, because when we first met up and talked about, collaborating and, doing some work together, it was always their goal to connect with the cosplayers and not exploit. In the realm that I worked in, a lot of companies would get a hold of me too, because I was so well ingrained with all the cosplayers. A lot of them were about exploiting what can we get out of them? What can we get from them? And from the first time I spoke with Ayman, it was always about how can we connect to them? How can we get them engaged? How can we celebrate them? Which was a big part of, what we've been doing for the last few years. So
that was Alan, and Alan is our connecting dot here between Ayman and myself. And as he kind of put it too, a lot of the same inspirations on what you're hearing. And I will say, Alan, when we first connected and we talked about VERO, And it was actually some, the cosplay community, and I'll give them a shout out, from Oh My Sophie to Baroness Von T and Noah Smith Images, and them connected me with Alan. And when I talked to him, the way he talked about VERO, it's anybody who's connected on it or just is on the platform. I mentioned Sophie as well, who is a cosplayer, who does it full time. The way they talk about it is so different than the way they talk about other platforms. And Ayman, I think that speaks volumes for what you guys are doing, because when you're not around, obviously anybody could say anything. And it's such a different conversation than it is when we're talking the other social media platforms.
That it really does mean a lot to hear you guys say that. At the end of the day, there are people behind every one of these actions that you're talking about, a cosplayer or a director or photographer, and they go through an effort. They put a lot of passion into what it is that they're doing. And what I saw going to some of these conventions, which I'd never been to before VERO, I was really amazed by the amount of creativity that each cosplayer put into their costume, into their outfits, into their persona. And some of them, even surprisingly, unsurprisingly, used cosplay as a means of being less shy or coming out of their shells and
definitely
expressing themselves better. And I found that to be amazing. And having us play any kind of part in that, I mean, it's just awesome. It's what we were doing this for. It's connecting with people on a human level. We're not trying to be a platform that is void of humanity. If we're going to be a social platform for people, it needs to be infused with humanity. You talk about brands. Yes, brands play some role in VERO's future or present or in its plans. But we're always focused on an individual being able to express themselves, connect with other people, find the things that they want to find, enrich themselves through others and others' experiences, because we can't experience everything ourselves. Our time is limited on this earth. And without everybody else helping us, how do we know which paths to take? How do we know, how can we learn from each other in order not to make the same mistakes that everybody else has either learned from or experienced themselves?
Definitely. As we get tight on time here, a few big topics, and we'll probably have to connect again down the future, because I have so much I want to talk to you, especially now that you knowing about all the geek stuff and your connections to some of it. A lot to chat about, but essentially, and obviously I don't want to put words in your mouth. You've never said this, but from my perspective, you talk social media in general, so no brand in particular. And I think a lot of what we've discussed has really kind of touched on it. I think it's the way we connect online is broken. It's a broken piece of it needs to be fixed. And what is the first big step? Obviously there's millions of steps and millions of options, but what do you think is a first big step? Us as a community, global community, by people all connected, not one brand specific or one government or one group, but as a global community, what is the first step we need to do to fix the way we connect with people online?
First off, don't choose a platform that is ad-based, because no matter what, there's always going to be something that gets in the way of your wanting to just simply connect with others. Can you imagine if you chose your email client the way social networks are chosen today, and you accepted that instead of getting a chronological list of emails from people that your friends or whoever is sending you an email to an algorithmic version where it's deciding what you get to see and what you don't get to see and at what time of day. It doesn't make any sense. I think that the business model that is dictating the behavior of platforms is a very big culprit. And it really, you mentioned the Social Network movie, but you didn't mention The Social Dilemma, which I think is
fantastic
documentary that represents the issues in a way that a lot of people can understand. It's the sort of thing we've understood for a really long time, but it's really hard to get up on a soapbox every few minutes and start telling people, what's what. But it's really good to see that this kind of issue is entering the zeitgeist. I'm a computer science major, so hearing the word algorithm come out of the majority of people these days is really quite surprising. It shouldn't be something that people know about. And the only reason they know about it is because it's getting in the way. And I think people need to start choosing platforms, especially social ones, where the platform doesn't get in the way. Chat apps do very well because you send somebody a message and they receive it. That's its job. That's what it's supposed to do. And I believe feed-based networks where you follow people and they post, that should just work the same. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but on the majority of other networks, when you post something, you probably reach less than 5% of people's feeds. And that's because there's an algorithmic feed that's deciding for you. And, for all the reasons that have been stated by various companies, it's in order to show you the things that it thinks you're going to be most interested in. But it's all about the attention grabbing. That it just doesn't work. It knows too much about you. In order to serve you the right ad, it needs to have not just when people say my data, quote unquote, I'm doing the air quotes here, my data. It still the penny hasn't dropped completely that it isn't about just your data. It's your behavior. It's knowing what you're going to do before you do it.
Right.
And that's when people start to ask me now, are they listening to me? Because I just mentioned something to my friend the other day, and all of a sudden I start seeing ads about that thing. And there's no way that, why would they show me these ads if they didn't hear my conversation? I said, well, there are two options here. One's probably scarier than the other. They either are listening to you and taking your words and putting them into ads for you to see, or they know what you're talking about without listening to you. So, you asked me, what's the first thing you need to do? Well, the first thing you need to do is make a change. The power's in people's hands. I think they've always known that, but it's not always easy for change to happen. And sometimes we need to change together for there to be a universal change in the world that happens as an effect of that.
Gosh, I mean, I think what you just said, though, even touches so much more than on social media and everything. I think it's a global thing. There is so much more that we realize we as the people have the power. And especially here in the States right now, it seems like as groups, we forget that and we let things happen that shouldn't be happening. So I think it's such a great thing you said, because it goes even beyond social media. So I thank you for that. That comment right there, I think, was powerful in so many ways, especially right now in this time. It's very important that we remember, not even on a global scale, just me personally, I have control of what's happening right here in this house. And we got to remember that. And we got to make decisions based on that, not decisions based on what better serves, as you mentioned, ends up better serving the algorithm, because we're trying to cater to everybody else, or trying to, I think, what was the word you used? We're trying to see how many reactions we get to our dance. So I think that's fantastic information. Again, I think we're pretty much at time here. I can't thank you enough. I want to talk so much more. So I think in the future, we'll definitely plan to connect. There's a lot happening with social media in the United States government and social media and politics, which as it plays out, we might have even more to talk about. But before we go, I think if the listeners haven't decided yet that they need to jump over to VERO if they haven't already, and what's the one thing you need to say to them to say, go check this out?
We're here to serve you. You're our customer. There's no other agenda. We're not working for anybody else. We're working here for every single user that comes on board. We're people putting this thing together. We care. There's a lot of passion that's put in, a lot of time and effort. We don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. We're learning a lot, especially these days. And we look forward to seeing you on the platform. So reach out and connect with each other and let your friends know about it if you do like it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Alan, thank you so much for connecting us here. This was a great conversation. Ayman, I can't thank you enough. Again, so much of what you said was so, I think, strong and genuine and everything like that. It gives me even better feeling about where VERO's heading, and a better feeling of where social media is heading in the future. Because as I mentioned, personally, my Facebook account, I follow nobody. I had almost none of the apps on my phone, because it sucks your time. It doesn't serve you. And it really feels like I have hope again that I can be connecting with friends and family in a way that, again, just excites me, as it's been a long time since that's been happening on those other platforms. But for those of you that want to get VERO, easy as can be. You head over to whether it's the Google Play Store or your Apple Store and type in VERO, download it. Again, a pleasure. I want to thank y'all both. Anything else y'all want to say before we wrap this up?
No, stay safe and take care of each other.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this episode of Diving Deep. Stay tuned as we're going to dive a little bit more into social media on some future episodes, as well as all of our other awesome topics. And if you like the Diving Deep podcast and you found it on Project Nerd, make sure you head to wherever you get your podcasts and search for Project Nerd's Diving Deep, as Diving Deep is on its own feed now. And you can always check out all of the amazing podcasts on the Project Nerd Podcast Network over at projectnerd.com/podcast. That's project-nerd.com/podcast. Until next time, stay safe.